Okay. And you know, the topic today, basically, we're going to talk about free genealogy sites. First of all, you know, not everything is available online. We all know that. We're all researchers here. And a lot of this may be old news to everybody, but I thought if we opened it up as a sort of freewheeling discussion, we all have different experiences and different places we go to look for things. And so feel free to share. This isn't
in Illinois, but still rent your.
Who are we talking? Who are we hearing?
Sorry, an ad popped up.
Oh, okay. But anywhere along the way, if you've got a thought or an opinion or you've used something, feel free to share it. I just want this to be sort of an open, freewheeling discussion. I'll start off with a few that I've jotted down, and I've made a document with some of these links of some of these places. If you come up with something and would like to add it to the discussion, I'll try to make a note and add that to that document. And when we have the recording of this meeting available and we'll throw it up on our YouTube channel, I'll put a link to that document as well. So you don't have to necessarily write everything down that we're talking about here today. Okay. Let me see about share screen here. Nope, that's not what I'm trying to share. Okay, new share.
You're stealing them all, aren't you?
Okay, what are we seeing? Nothing, as far as I can tell.
You can see your desktop.
Yeah, my desktop. Well, okay. Yeah. Open Zoom meetings. Let's get rid of that. Okay, get rid of my mail. Okay.
Just don't delete your Zoom.
Okay. Well, one of the first places in terms of talking about free genealogy sites is Family Search, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And if you're not, then you're certainly missing out on a lot. I think, you can, and I put links on here for those of you who may not be aware, but all of the US censuses are available for free on Family Search, just as they are on the paid sites like Ancestry, and a lot more. And there are other censuses, I think probably Canadian censuses, some of the UK censuses may be on there. One of the things I wanted to point out, when you do a search, you can, of course, search on records, images, family trees, which, can be useful, although they always have to be verified, just as the same as the family trees we see on Ancestry or even on the DNA project that people post. But what I find very helpful, if you've never used it, is the research wikis. Because if you want to go to a certain place and see what sources are available, then this will guide you and it's any place in the world. We could do Europe, but if you go to North America, you can pick out United States, and you can go to a specific state. I tend to go to Tennessee because that's where I was born and where my family is from. But you go there, and it will give you a wealth of information on what Tennessee research is, or whatever state you're going to, the availability of records. You can go to a specific county. You can either go to the list or just click on the map, and Roane County, it's where my ancestors were prior to the Civil War. And it'll tell you what censuses are available, where the county courthouse is, which I've spent a lot of time in, record dates, what dates records are available from, and what censuses are available, probate, things like this, record loss, which is very important, especially in southern states and southern counties, because a lot of courthouses were burned either during the war or just because in the old days they were wooden buildings and fires happened. Boundary changes, which are something that you need to know because you may be looking in the wrong county for a certain time period for records that would be in a parent county or so. If you've never used these research wikis, and they're not just on locations, but all kinds of different subjects and that sort of thing, they're very helpful. And that's something that I think people don't always think about. And a lot of times, things will take you to, they'll reference paid sites, but they will usually indicate whether they're free or a subscription, but at least you know what's out there and there's Susan.
Hey folks, sorry to be late.
That's okay. Any thoughts from some of those who've used these sort of things or on Family Search in general?
Well, you mentioned the census reports. I know that they actually allow you to print the original copy of the census pages, which is a nice thing to have. So you can see, if someone has misinterpreted it, possibly what the original writing looked like.
Yeah, as helpful as the census abstractions are, it's always best to look at the actual image, because not only do you see who's nearby on the page, but also, you very often, because the family, you can see that they've misinterpreted a name or whatever.
And Ken, just to add in here, that happens a lot more often than I think people give it credit for. I've been trying to gather up all the census material on every family, that I sort of know about. And there was one case in particular where it was sort of like I found them in this one, and then they weren't listed at all. And then it went on. And so I knew that it was likely that the name had been, indicated incorrectly. And so I basically took, the prior census and basically blocked out where, my family would have been. And sure enough, they were there. So a lot of these online sources, they do their very best, but it's not always enough. And quite frankly, some of the handwriting is so atrocious that people are just really doing their best to put something out there, but everybody should sort of double check, is I guess to describe that.
Well, it's always challenging when a family doesn't show up in one census when they were there prior and they were there after. And very often that reason was they may have been missed. Nobody was home and the census taker gave up. But there's also the chance that the indexing or whatever was so badly done that your search terms, unless you're very generous in spelling or creative, just might not show up. And in that case, you kind of do the equivalent of what we used to do when we had the old microfilm. You just put that roll on and you go through the whole county and page by page, and you can do that online. But sometimes, for instance, parks might be listed under barks or packs or something. So, and their search engines sometimes will give you variations, but sometimes not. And so if you can't find somebody, don't give up. But it may take, just sort of slogging through page by page looking for them. If you know they're there.
I discovered Family Search relatively recently, and there's probably more than one Parks that was contributing to the tree that was there for my corner of the family tree. And there was my great grandfather or something like that was, as far as I could tell, was Harry Parks, Harry. And I think that happened because if you just look at the census and you eyeball it and you go, it looks like Harry, and somebody else had Harry. I had Harry. I believed it was Harry. But in Family Search, no, it was the other way. It was Harvey, I thought. And in Family Search, it had it as Harry. And I'm like, well, these people are wrong. So I was going to prove that they were wrong. Well, guess what? It was me. So that was a big help. That was like the first week I discovered Family Search. So I'm kind of a fan because there's a lot of people contributing. And as you know, anybody that does any genealogy, it's just as important to find mistakes and find out that they are mistakes, maybe more important than, oh, look, here's another Parks. Yay. It doesn't do you a whole lot of good, does it?
Yeah.
I rarely use the family tree at Family Search, but I use the catalog every day to find the microfilms of the original records that they have, to look at the search through page by page through deed books and all sorts of other things on their catalog, using their catalog. And it's very easy to use.
Do you, Wilma, do you have a family history center somewhere nearby where if you have to, you go in there and look at the microfilm?
Yeah, there's one, 10 miles from the house, probably.
Oh, that's not bad.
But they're still doing appointment only.
Oh,
So that's kind of, you got to have the right minute when somebody's there to make your appointment and then go. But we do have one.
yeah. There's such a wealth of stuff, and to their credit, Family Search is getting more and more of that online, but you'll still come across a lot of things in there that can only be viewed at a family history center. And that's one thing.
Some Virginia records are like that. There's quite a few counties that some of their things like estate settlements and things like that you have to go to the Family History Center to see.
Yeah.
But by and large, I found wonderful results using just what I can see from home. Of course, you have to be signed in.
Well,
to see it.
yeah, you sign in, but for those of you who may not be aware of it, Family Search is free. You have to create an account and sign in when you go, but it doesn't cost anything. I think they just want to sort of keep track of you, for whatever reason. They want to know who's in there and using it. But it's a free account, and there are some things that are only available at the History Center, and I'm not sure whether it's a case of just not having been, digitized yet, or there's some things that may be copyright issues or arrangements they made with whoever they acquired that information from.
That's what they said a while back, that the ones that are locked down from your home view have the arrangements they have with the original owner of whatever materials they are. The agreement they have won't allow you to look at them at home.
It's interesting, Wilma, you say that, because a friend of mine is very involved with the Philadelphia Historical Society, and it just has, the building is just chock full of incredible information, but for so many years, they just didn't have the bandwidth or the finances to put that information online. Well, Family Search and Ancestry reached out to them now, probably a couple years ago, and they have made an arrangement with the Philadelphia Historical Society to digitize their records. But they do have some type of limitation on how that information can be distributed. So, but at least it's getting online.
Right.
And there was no other way that information was going to make it. So, and also too, I will say this, Family Search and Ancestry have, not only are they producing scans of each of this material, they're also giving those scans to the Historical Society. So it is a win for them.
Yeah, they did that with the newspaper collection at Kansas Historical Society. Believe it or not, Kansas has the largest collection of newspapers in the world. And I went and heard a presentation about the digitization project up there, and they made all the things that are out of copyright available to Kansas residents if they had just enter your driver's license in when you're looking at the library, and you can look at all the newspapers that way. But for those of us who don't live in Kansas, we still have to get newspapers.com to see that collection. But it's just a benefit for whatever repository has the records.
Right.
Let them do that.
Wilma, does that Kansas collection include newspapers outside of Kansas?
Yeah, all kinds of different world source
Wow.
newspapers. Some of the things that you see on newspapers.com might be held in the Kansas Historical Society.
Wow.
An enormous newspaper collection.
And newspapers are a source that we doesn't always spring to mind when you're doing research, and yet when it does come up as a hint or a suggestion on Ancestry or whatever, they're wonderful. And some of the older newspapers too, if it's a notice of, I just saw one the other day of a Parks gentleman who was in his 90s, and he was walking his 30-year-old mule down to get water or something, and probably had a stroke or something, fell in the water and died. And there's a little article about that in some old newspaper. And, that's, you wouldn't find that in any other record source other than it was probably before there were death certificates. So there's a lot of good stuff in newspapers.
I like the old messages, and it continued really until I think my father was probably a young, a teenager, but the small town papers in Virginia would indicate when he came to visit his grandmother. And it was very formal. It would say, this is Tyler is entertaining guests from, New Jersey this week, and her daughter's come, what I mean? It was, but I loved all that because it not only, do you get an indication of sort of the flourishes that, the hometown newspaper was very important for disseminating, not just, purely, news of a different kind, it was also a way of disseminating social. And my grandmother's
Facebook.
Wedding in write-up was beautiful. It talked about her dresses, and it was a lot of fun to read.
Yeah.
Certainly, nicer than some of the write-ups that happen today, where it just sort of just states the facts.
Yeah, my grandmother wrote the column for our little town for the county paper. And so every week she was on the phone for 2 or 3 hours calling everybody in town to ask them if they had any news to go in the paper.
Yeah. But,
I actually found an article in the New York Times about a dust-up my grandfather had with another bloke in the Tabor Theater in Denver, which resulted in them both falling off the balcony and crunching a few people below and them getting arrested. I had no idea. And there it was in the New York Times.
the Tabor Theater in Denver.
That's right.
Well, that's Horace Tabor, who was probably named after, who was a very wealthy man in Denver. It was that whole era of Unsinkable Molly Brown. There were a lot of characters in Denver at that time. And there's an opera called The Ballad of Baby Doe that
Baby Doe Tabor was one of the Tabor daughters.
He was married to Horace
Theater
Tabor.
Was a very famous theater in Denver. And I guess he and I were in the balcony and they got into a slugfest, and it created quite a stir. And that was before he married my grandmother by about 3 months. So looks like she tamed him down. But I was really surprised to find it in the New York Times, for heaven's sake.
When I was living upstate New York, near Albany, in a little town called Mucheskill, we all subscribed to the Chatham Courier. And each little town had its own little recording person. Blanche Castle handled Mitchellskill and Scotic Landing. And without a doubt, every week in the column, there would be Mr. and Mrs. Chester Funk spent Sunday afternoon at their daughter, Mrs. Marion Herman's, for a wonderful dinner. And then the next week, it'd be the other way around. And I remember a school teacher that had just moved into the area. He had a copy of the Courier, had just come out that day. And I said, take a look at the column from Mitchellskill. I bet you'll find, let's see, this week it's, they visited Mrs. Marion Herman. And he opened up the letter. Yeah, how'd you know that was going to be in it? Sit there every week. That's it. You know? Of course, one week she put in something about what's going on behind the green door. And that just caused an uproar because there were 3 households in the area that had a green front door. And I'm sure that none of them were pleased that there was a piece in the paper about it. But, you know, that was, yes, the Chatham Courier kept us all in touch with everything in the neighborhoods, you know. And those, I don't even think the Chatham Courier still exists, but it was a wonderful little local paper. So.
Well, just kind of moving on a little bit here, another resource, which is certainly free, is, and you're probably familiar with, Cindy's List. It's been around a long time and it keeps growing and growing, but it's a great gateway to all sorts of things, and any topic and any location and any interest that you could find in terms of genealogy is there. And the links, supposedly they have a method of going through on a regular basis to make sure the links are good. But for instance, Social Security, obviously American Ancestors, it says it's the Social Security Death Index is free. I went there. Well, it's free with a trial subscription or something like that. So it's a little deceptive. Ancestry, of course, has it. But this download the death master file free. I went to that site and slowly backed away. It was some guy who had paid good money, I guess, for the master file and was making it available. But the website's a little old-fashioned looking. I'm not sure, and it would download in a huge zip file, and they're listed in order of Social Security number. I don't know that it would be terribly useful. But Family Search, you know, has the SSDI death index on there, so there are different places to find some of these things other than the paid sites. Again, this genealogy bank, I didn't check it out. It says free. A lot of those places are, you get there and, you know, you can see so much, and then they want you to sign up for a trial subscription. Free search of Social Security death records on MyHeritage. Things like that. Any topic you can name, though, is on Cindy's List. I mean, just the categories just go on and on. See if we can.
The Social Security Death Index, at this point, it's up to 2014. Is that correct? So there's nothing after that at this point. And the question will be is, will they ever, you know, be adding in information to it?
Well, there was a law passed in Congress several years ago that affected that. It used to be updated monthly, I believe, in the old days, and was very current. But then somebody in Congress got a bug in their bonnet, or bee in their bonnet about, you know, protect identity theft and blah, blah, blah. And so they put some sort of a time limit on how recent they could post. And so right now it looks like, if with 2014 being the most recent, we've got a 6, 7, 8 year backlog, you know.
Yeah, Ken, I'll say this. I mean, you know, before it was happening almost, you know, as you said, very, very current, but a lot of times the estates weren't closed out. So what was happening is it was giving thieves an opportunity to make claims to.
Well, you know, it's not that it wasn't a legitimate, but I think, you know, they went too far. And, you know, certainly with the advent of online newspaper obituaries and things like that, for people within the last 6-7 years, very often an online search will bring those up. But we don't have the SSDI for more recent deaths the way we would like. But just getting back to the categories, I mean, you can see just, you know, they're alphabetical. They go down the page and then back up. But just about anything you can think of is there. And, you know, you click on, well, newspapers, you know, let's go there. 1,133 links. And, you know, you can get lost in some of this, but it's a great gateway and saves you a lot of time and can bring up things that you might not have ever discovered any other way. And of course, this is taking, here we go.
Hey, Ken.
Yeah.
Have you gone to the legal website yet? I mean, I came a little late, so I'm not sure which ones you've
Gone to the what? Gone to the what?
It's the attorney's page. I was just trying to pull it up a minute ago.
The LexisNexis?
No. There's a woman attorney out there who does a lot with sort of genealogical.
The legal genealogist?
The legal genealogist.
Oh, Judy Russell. Judy Russell.
I found her website to be very helpful too.
Well, yeah, she has a blog, and you can search it on different topics. Yeah, if many of us have attended conferences where Judy's a wonderful speaker, and she does some very interesting presentations on how the law affects different aspects of genealogy. For instance, she does one on women in the law and how their legal standing changed over the years, and how that affects, you know, how you're searching for a female ancestor, because in the old days, you know, they didn't have legal standing, and any number of topics, and she presents them very well. So anytime you can, the blog is The Legal Genealogist. I'll put that on that list, but it's free. You just have to subscribe. Okay.
Hey, and speaking of conferences, just want to let people know that the New England Regional Genealogical Conference is going to be in Springfield, Massachusetts, and it is, I believe it is March. I'll pull up the dates, but I've registered to go. Let me just get there real quickly.
Are they doing anything like streaming online these days?
They did so 2 years ago.
During COVID?
It was online.
Yeah.
And so it is May 3rd through May 6th.
That's May 3rd to the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to several of those when we lived up in Lowell, Massachusetts. In fact, and Ted came, and I think the one we went to was in Springfield. No, it wasn't Springfield. It was up in New Hampshire.
Right.
Yeah, just
that was the one with the domestic terror event in.
Well, that's when the bombings in Boston happened while that conference was going on. Of course, because it's New England centric, a lot of people, there were people up there from Boston, and for a while they couldn't even get home because they literally locked the city down to hunt for those guys. Yeah, it was a bizarre situation. It
was Manchester, New Hampshire.
Manchester, that's yeah. And but they're very good. A lot of their tracks are, you know, New England centered, but a lot of them are of a more general nature. So
yeah, Cindy was there the last one I went to, and I believe the woman who did who has the legal genealogist, I think she was there as well.
Mhm.
It's very interesting, and it does go beyond New England. They
Oh,
have
yeah.
folks there who are, depending on your interest level, really any topic you can think of, there was somebody there. So
Yeah.
I found it very helpful.
Yeah. Let me see what else I had here. Oh, this was this screen that we're seeing now. I went to Family Search and on their Social Security death index and just typed in John Parks, just a generic, pretty common name, and just to see who came up. And you know, they have a lot. The other thing with Family Search is you can see the record details. Once my computer. A wonderful slow connection for some reason here today. But one of the things I wanted to point out is, see if I can this down, is I noticed on that one too, there was a little icon for a family tree, which you could, again, click on, that they have linked to this person. Again, how accurate that is, you have to judge for yourself, but it shows you he's attached to the family tree, John Edward Parks, and they even give you a link to find a grave. So it's something like what happens on Ancestry a lot. You get a couple of more places to go to follow up on this. So that can be useful. One of the other spots I just took a look at National Archives and what's available on there, and they have, you know, extensive holdings. You can search their catalog. They've got, of course, all the pension files for Civil War and other things, tons and tons of, and just even not just the actual records they hold, but you know, they have research tools, you know, a guide to federal records to help you understand things better, of what kind of records were kept and how they were kept or why they came about. So there's all kinds of stuff on the National Archives site. Researching your ancestry, military records, and of course, a lot of these things are available on Family Search. I think, I think somehow through National Archives, I discovered that, you know, Family Search has the Civil War widows pensions, which are also on Ancestry, but you can access them on Family Search for free. They are working their way through the widows and dependents pension files. They have gotten up to the P's finally, so Parks is there. I've already, you know, gotten most of the ones in my family prior to this from going down to DC, but you know, there are tons of things there, and let's see what comes up just with Parks. But again, you can see the actual pension file images, and I'm assuming you can download them too.
You know, it was through the pension files that I learned that my great-grandfather had been divorced, because when his widow, my great-grandmother, went for his pension, she had to prove that there had been a divorce and that the pension shouldn't go to the first wife.
Right.
And that had never been talked about in the family, so I had no idea.
Yeah.
Before he came
Well,
west and got married again.
Well, that's why the widows' pensions are so useful. The pensions for the soldiers who survived can be interesting and give you a lot of information, but the widows' pensions, yes, as you mentioned, they have to prove that they were the legitimate widow of that person, and so they had to give proof of marriage, dates, and have usually had people had, if there was no marriage certificate, they had to have affidavits from people who had attended the wedding and would swear to it. If there were minor children, they had to be named and their dates of birth and all that. So you can get a great deal of good genealogical information out of the widow's pension files. And the same with earlier, Revolutionary War and 1812, some of those. Here's a Hannah Parks from Michigan. And you see her husband's name was John S. Parks. Again, you can look at just the record details, or you can actually look at the images. And this is all on Family Search. Well, actually, I lied. It takes you to fold 3. And since I have a subscription, I can't vouch for the fact that if you don't have a subscription to fold 3, that you can actually see these. So I may stand corrected on that. But at least you'll be able to get the record details. Somebody who doesn't have a fold 3 subscription or ancestry that includes fold 3 might be able to tell us whether you can actually see these. This might be, you might have access to it because, again, that might be the arrangement they made, the National Archives made with fold 3. For instance, the 1880 census on ancestry is free because years ago when they made that, the LDS Church made their images of the 1880 census available, and I think they're indexing to ancestry. It was with the arrangement that would always be free. So that may be the case here, but don't quote me on that.
I don't think that the widow's pensions are free on fold 3.
Okay.
Unless they have a deal with, like you said, a deal with Family Search to make them free if they're accessed through Family Search or something like that. The War of 1812 pensions, which are not complete either, are free. And they will always be free. That was the original agreement with them.
Right. Wasn't there it wasn't that long ago, there was a big project to with the War of 1812 pensions.
Yeah, it was with, what's that group that has defunct now? The conference, they always had conferences, FGS. They raised the money to have the pensions digitized. The War of 1812 digitized, and Ancestry had matching funds. And they raised enough money, and then for some reason the National Archives shut down the project. It's taken forever for them to get back and get the rest of it done. They got through S, I think, or up to S, and then they've not gotten anything else finished.
Yeah, I remember Judy Russell, the legal genealogist, was active in that, because I remember being at some conference where she got up and they actually took a collection. They passed the hat at one of the banquets for that that was ongoing at the time. So, yeah.
You know, one of the things I find challenging about these images is being able to print them. Sometimes they make it kind of easy, and sometimes you have to stand on your head and take a screenshot.
Gary,
Yeah.
if you click on this little thing up here that says tools, it's tool symbol, for example, on fold 3, that little monkey wrench and hammer, it'll give you a drop down that will say download. You can download that picture, and then you can do whatever you want to with it, because it'll be a JPEG on your computer.
Yeah.
Where is this?
It's on the upper right hand there on the taskbar above on fold 3.
I think my pictures of the members here are blocking it.
Where can, okay.
I've got it there. So
Oh, I got two
you do
screens.
that,
That's why.
you can download the entire page or just a region or the entire file, which is probably what you'd want to do. Because sometimes there are, pages and pages in that file.
And Wilma, you find that true for just about all the images on
On
Family
fold three,
search?
yes, absolutely, on fold
And-
three, and
all three?
on Ancestry, there's also a little tools icon when you're looking at the thing that you want on Ancestry. There's a little tools icon on the right-hand side. There's a little bar that comes down, and you just click on that tools, and you can download whatever you're looking at. And not just download it from the screenshot that you normally get on Ancestry, but you actually get the picture, not just that reduced size image that they have.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So there you've got the option there, JPEG or PDF. So, yeah. One thing that I was doing an online search for, and I came across this, something about a free Ancestry account. And I thought, well, I've never quite heard of that before. There is something to that, but it really isn't what you think it is. You especially if you're doing DNA as a registered guest, you'll never be billed, and it never expires. But you can search their free databases. You can activate a DNA test. You got access to the support. You can create a family tree on there and edit and delete it. You can share trees on there, view DNA results that have been shared with you. You can message people, post to boards. But what you can't do with a free, surprise, surprise, a free registered guest account is view most records or ancestor hints and view public family trees without being invited and so forth and so on. So it's a little misleading, but it's better than nothing, I guess. But I guess even if you've had a paid account and it's expired, you can still do this registered guest thing. Or if you've never had an account, you can do that. How useful that is, at least, it would expose you to what's there, and it might determine for you whether it's worth your while to. And the thing is, a lot of times with an Ancestry account or some of the other paid sites, you can sort of get all of your ducks in a row and determine what you want to search and sign up for a limited amount of time. And then sometime when you have the time to do it, and get as much as you can out of that 3-month membership or whatever, and then let it go. So that's an option. I think somehow I missed one of the things I thought I had a screen up here to talk about, but is don't forget Google. One of the things, and I will have some links on this sheet about that, with several links to several articles. But if you just Google for genealogy or something like that, there are a number of you'll see there are a number of hits and articles, and there are even some YouTube videos, and a lot of it shows you how to use the search terms and use quotations or the minus symbol or some others, time frames. There are certain ways to put a search into Google that can bring up results for you. So just go to Google and put Google for genealogy, and or Goggle, as I pointed. I said, but there's a lot of stuff there, and if YouTube videos are, there's some things out there. Could be some useful hints and tips in there. But don't forget, a lot of times I just start and Google, a name or a name and a place or a name of a husband and a wife with her maiden name, just to see what comes up. And it's surprising sometimes what's out there, and things that you might not think of looking for or didn't realize it was there. So don't forget good old Google. It's your friend for a lot of things, and not just specifically searching for ancestors, but any kind of skill or any kind of application for something that you don't know. Google it. I mean, it's it's there. You know, that's the thing about the internet these days. It's there if you Google it. And you know, when I need, because I'm not a tech person at all, but if I need to figure out how to do something on MailChimp or with Google Drive, and I can't figure it out, I Google it. And usually there's either an article or a video, a YouTube video that will help you out.
You have more patience or skill than I, because I wish my last name was something other than Parks.
Well,
State parks, city parks, all these parks.
we've got that, but you can use a minus national, you know, so you don't get things about national parks, or minus city or municipal, things like that, which can help some. It's not foolproof, but you know, as bad as Parks is, you know, can you imagine being Baker or White or, you know, names like that? I mean, it just would be hopeless.
Has anyone used DuckDuckGo?
I have a little bit, but I don't go to it with any regularity.
How do you find it?
I don't really have enough experience with it to express an opinion.
My husband uses it all the time and he thinks it's just fine.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I use it all the time too. It doesn't track you, and it doesn't have the same kind of algorithms that Google does. So Google will throw up what it thinks you want to see, and DuckDuckGo will throw up everything. It doesn't prioritize it. So, and it's sometimes worth going to both, because you do get different things coming up. But I use DuckDuckGo because I don't like being tracked. Yeah.
Well, I'll put that on the list along with Google, because that's a good option, and I'll have to try it. You know, I hope to learn as much from this as anybody today, and that's one of the things that's good to know with other people's experience. Another area, very quickly, that we could talk about is just social media. A lot of people don't do Facebook. I'm on there way too much, but there are pages for all sorts of you know, specialties and areas. As an example, here's one for North Carolina genealogy that I find very useful, and it's active. One of the women who contributes a lot of files to it is a Facebook friend. We became because of this, but you know, you join these things, and for instance, if this one's typical of it, they actually have a section called files. And they upload files here, and you can search through them and find things that are, well, here's a file using Google before family search and ancestry, but there are others that are, you know, books all donated, North Carolina room, but they've got links or files to Irish counties with Facebook pages, but they often, she also often puts up links to places like the North Carolina archives that has a lot of really good information, a lot of old records and microwave wills and land records and things. And don't forget, you know, state archives very often, and things like that will come up very often when you do a wiki search on family search for a certain location or a state. It'll let you know what the state archives is. You can go to the site and see what they have available online. But you know, social media, you know, can be useful. It's more than just, you know, friends posting cat videos. or pictures, which I'm as guilty as the next person. But there is a lot of good stuff out here. Special interest groups.
Ken, another source of research is Google Books, and also in Family Search, you can search their catalog of books.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, in Family Search, if the book is no longer copyright, you may be able to download the whole book.
Yeah, yeah. On the sheet that I will post under the Google category, I've put something about that, about Google Books and Google newspapers and all sorts of things. Yeah, Google has a lot out there. And also just Googling for books, not just through Google Books, but you can also find there are other resources, libraries that have a lot of online books that are available. Wilma has been helping out, searching out some parks related books that are available in e-versions that you can either view or download. And that's all really helpful. What I found on those that's you don't automatically always think about are county histories, and there are a lot of those available. And a lot of those county histories, if you search within them, will have references to ancestors that otherwise you might not think about.
A lot of those books are on archive.org.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Hathi Trust site, you can find a lot of books there that have been digitized by universities and so on. So.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else got some favorite methods or sites that they like to go to? I think the important thing is we started off saying free sites, and that's what we wanted to focus on. But at some point, then you just sort of broaden it to online genealogy, and you know, we love to hate them sometimes, but Ancestry's got a heck of a lot of stuff out there. But the point is, there's so much more out there that Ancestry doesn't have and never will have. So I'm as guilty as the next person of going to this, the same few sources, and you're leaving a lot potentially on the table by not backing out and widening your search. So it's good to sort of mix it up once in a while, and if nothing else, just keep a sort of a list by your computer sometime, and a little checklist of places to go to and things to try, instead of just going to the same 2 or 3 sites all the time.
And also too, Ken, I mean, we're talking about online sites, but sometimes you can, you'll be searching for something, you kind of come across a brick wall, something is in a record, but you don't have access to it. I keep a list of things that I want to look up if I'm ever in whatever area it is. So for example, like I have an ongoing list, to look up at the DAR library. Well, they have a lot of resources on site, and I'm a member, but there's a lot of things that just quite frankly haven't been put online. And I just go into the library when I'm in DC, and it's open to everybody. You don't have to be a member in order to go in and use the library. It's a beautiful place to just do research. So I want to put that out there too, that while it's not, online, you can still do a lot of your legwork online, and then have a really specific list that you kind of can target some research by going to certain places. Another paid membership that I found a lot of information through, and again, it depends on where your family is from primarily, is the New England Historical Genealogical Society, and they have an online presence, but they also have a library, and in Boston. So again, keep that list, come up with different things. And if you find, you can also sort of pay for things a la carte. If you want to spend a day in Boston, you don't have to buy a membership. They'll give you a day pass to go into the library, and it's a really phenomenal place. So, memberships don't have to be purchased. Day passes can happen, and other things too. So just put that out there. Did we lose Kent?
Looks like it.
Ken?
Almost looks like it. Can I just add two items? When we were talking about looking in census, if you find your individual in one census, but you go to the next census and you can't find them there, remember that county lines, were not always carved in stone. And particularly if the location was anywhere near a possible division point, take a look at the neighboring county and see if maybe now that's being enumerated in a different county. That's one of those things. And looking through, when I did my 1950 census thing, it was 48 pages, but I went through every doggone page and I found the family I was looking for on the 48th page. You keep looking through. And finally, I once again want to recommend, I have no financial deal with this, but Family Tree magazine is published by Yankee Publishing Company. It's $36 a year. It's 6 issues a year. It's got amazing stuff. In the most recent issue, January, February, it has a state research guide for Alabama and Oregon. They have an article about, like they call it history in reverse. It's talking about pictures and negatives in that. They're talking about, 14 one-day projects. Things that you might want to do, just set out. It's a one-day type of thing to organize this, that, or something else. $36 a year. If it's Canadian, you add $8 for $44. I love it. And this, to me, I think it has a lot of good information in it. So, it's a few dollars, but it's well worth it, I think. So that's the only comments I have left. Okay.
Yeah, I apologize. My computer decided it needed to reboot itself. So it took me a while to get back in. I'm hoping and assuming that Zoom just kept recording the meeting while I was gone. So we'll see when I download it and take a look. But
It still says recording and up in the corner, so
yeah,
I think it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So Microsoft. So anyway, well, anybody else got anything?
I have a question, maybe
Sure.
for the newspaper experts. I have my third great grandfather has a son that I haven't been able to prove it's his son, and his son wrote one of the great papers that a lot of people in the Park Society know about John Parke and Mary Gordon.
Mm.
And he mentions all of the sons. So if I could prove the connection, it would solidify my family tree. So I'm trying to figure out a way to connect them. And I've come to the realization, maybe the only thing left is newspapers in the area. Now it's a rural New Jersey, Northwest rural county, especially years ago. And I think a lot of the newspapers came out of Pennsylvania, Easton, Pennsylvania. And I'm a lot like Carrie. I am not the best at searching, and I get impatient very quickly. And I have not really done a lot of research, and I don't really know where to start to try to find out if there was any newspapers or where to find them. So if anyone could give me any ideas, that would be great.
Gary, you might try Chronicling America, which is the Library of Congress. It has all the small town newspapers, or most of them. And you can access it through the internet.
Yeah.
Now, I'm probably looking from like 1840 to 1880. So I would assume they would have that year in there.
The Chronicling America has some of the digitized images. And they also have a listing of all the newspapers that were published and where they were published. It's on the same page. It's just a different drop-down menu as you scroll across the top there.
And is this a free site?
Free site, yeah, it's Library of
okay.
Congress.
Super, thank you.
And whether it's digitized or not, at least that gives you a good idea of what was in existence
yeah.
in that time period. So you can look for them somewhere, if not online, then in a library someplace that might hold them.
And Gary, if you find the location, just send me an email and I'll look for you on newspapers.
Oh,
to see
thank
if
you,
I can
Wilma.
find anything.
Super. I'm hoping there might be a marriage announcement or a death announcement or birth, something that would connect them.
You never know. Well, before we go, I just briefly, Gary, I wanted to talk a little bit about something DNA related, and it will kind of lead us to perhaps what we might want to use as a topic for our next month's meeting. So did you have something to screen share?
Yeah, let me see if I can bring it up. I think I can. Can everyone see that?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, so Ken and I are just scratching the surface of Big Y DNA testing. We don't really know an awful lot about it yet. And one of the things I wondered was how many people in Parke Project have already tested for Big Y. And if there would be someone from every one of the branches of the DNA groups, maybe I could put a map together and figure out where they branched off from each other and how close they're related. So I went into our database and I found that there was, I think what do we have, Ken, about 22 different groups in the DNA project?
Yeah, something like that. The group numbers are higher because I've left a lot of blank spaces for future groups, but they're about 20 something, yeah, in there.
And I think I found about, I can't remember, it was somewhere between 11 and 13 of those groups that someone had actually tested their Big Y DNA. So what I did is I went and I charted them here. And it was kind of interesting, really. Now, this is probably a very small sample size, and there may be some illusions that have popped up that aren't really true, but we won't know until Big Y DNA testing becomes more popular and more people test. But what I did find is, and let me see if I can make sense of this for you. And you can chime in, Ken, if you want to add something here.
Yeah, let me just sort of set the stage or give it some context for some of you who are not that familiar with Y DNA testing. What we've done in our project is look at what we call markers. They're actually, we call them STRs, STRs, short tandem repeats, and that's the 67, 111 markers we look at. And these are locations on the Y chromosome that tend to get passed on and mutate at varying rates. And those are useful for looking at more recent, within a genealogical time frame, connections. What we're talking about now with the Big Y, in addition to more of those markers, is something called SNPs. And we'll talk about this if we do this next month. We'll set the stage a little better. But SNPs are something called single nucleotide polymorphisms. That's why they call them SNPs. But there are mutations that happen much less frequently, and what happens is that branches mankind off into what they call a haplotree. So what you're looking at right now is some branches of that huge haplotree that goes way back in time, hundreds of thousands of years. And so it's more distant ancestry. But what it can tell us is for two branches of a Parke's line that don't seem to be connected within a recent time frame, we can look at that and get a better idea of when those branches split off from each other. And Carrie's group is what prompted a lot of this, because a couple of people in that group have become very active and have gotten almost everyone in that group to take this big Y test. And it's proving very useful because they roots back to Ireland, Northern Ireland, but also Scotland. And it's enabling them to tell within a time frame many years ago when those branches split off from each other. So that's what we're looking at here. And those different number letter combinations are SNPs.
Carrie's group is group 34, and I've only taken one of the people. There's actually been 13 people that have tested from group 34, big Y, and half of them are actually in Ireland. So they're looking for their connection back to Scotland. And their project name is RS2123. They've actually created a project in FTDNA like we've created the Parke project. And if I were to bring up their group, I'm not going to do it because a lot of their private names are on there, but I have a chart for them. And you can actually see them breaking off from here and here and here, which come into the 17, 18, and 1900s. So if you get enough people testing, you can start to see where the branches are more recent. But it is interesting to even go back far and see where the different Parke groups branched off. I go back to this particular bunch of trees here is the R1B group, which if you test Y12 through Y111 test, you will probably come up with a haplogroup of RM269, which is that green marker here that I'm showing. And that's all it's going to tell you. But if you test big Y, it's going to go way beyond that into more recent days and tell you where you've broken off. So the R group here really started back in Asia, probably in China, Mongolia. It was interesting because a lot of the ancestors came from Africa through the Middle East, and then they went over to India and then on into the Far East. And a lot of them circled back through Mongolia and China, through the Urals and Russia, and Ukraine, and back into Europe. Ken's group is not on this chart. He actually has a much different branch than a lot of the people in this society. And his people went from the Middle East right up into Europe. So anyway, it's interesting that if you go down here, that these 2 or 3 groups here have broken off about when Stonehenge was built around 2450 BC. And they seem to be in Ireland, Northern Ireland, these two groups in Ireland. And then if you go up and look into these top groups, like the Roger Parke line K broke off from the R Parke line back around pretty much the same time, really. And they went into England. So it's kind of, it's novel at this point. It's kind of neat to see.
Yeah.
But I think as more people get involved in the project and you have more people joining, this project like this RS123, like Carrie's group, I think you're going to get a lot more out of it. So, we're just scratching the surface now. It's kind of interesting.
So next month, if we want to do this, we'll sort of hopefully explain it and start from scratch and explain it a little better. And while it's interesting because it gives you ancient ancestry, which is an interesting topic, there are applications to genealogy research today. That's some information that you can use in actually looking at your line in a genealogical significant time frame. So we just want to sort of tease that, and then we'll try to have our presentation a little bit more orderly so that you know what you're looking at, and hopefully we know what we're looking at.
But you got a month to go, huh, Ken? That's
yeah,
pretty tough.
I took the test and really didn't understand it, so I let it sit there for a while. And one other person in our group had taken the test, and he's the one who traces his line back to England about 1700. And by comparing our two, you can see that the branches did split off some time ago. In the meantime, Dan Parks, my cousin here, has a big Y test on order. So possibly before next month, we'll have that in to take a look at. And I want to start trying to get some other people in our group, especially the ones who have connections, more recent connections to County Armagh in Northern Ireland, to test and see if that tells us some things. So stay tuned next month, and we'll try to make this a little clearer.
Yeah, my results didn't come back either, so I'm not on this chart. I'm interested to see where I fall, and I have a feeling I'm probably going to fall down here close to Carrie's group, but we'll find out.
Well, if we can eventually bring enough people in the project along, there are a great many groups that have ties to Ireland, mostly Northern Ireland, and that could certainly help, separate out a lot of these branches.
I have a question for Tad, actually. A lot of these I went in to try to find out where the people think their roots were. Like, Ken, yours is from Armagh, County Armagh in Northern Ireland, and I believe mine is from County Antrim. But a lot of these, especially in England, they just say England, and I wasn't able to come up with a more specific. And I'm just wondering, for example, the Q line and the R line, I just have England or England question mark. And I wonder if Tad, if you know if there's a more specific area that they think they may be from. Is Tad gone?
He may be, or he may be between.
There I am. I'm back on.
Yeah.
As for the R line, we do know that he came, I think he came from outside of London somewhere. But now the Q line, which is what we used to think is 2R1, is not related to the Richard that came in 1635. We have no idea really who his parent is. That's something that Larry Mitchell has been working on for ages. And, we just wish that they hadn't burned a few courthouses and churches in New England during the war. But we have no idea where that one comes from. But we know that Richard 1R1 supposedly came from somewhere just outside of London. So that's all we know on that. Okay.
Well, the Q line, which was at one time thought to be related to the R, but now we know it's not. It's the Lieutenant Richard Parks. Has an interesting DNA connection to some gentlemen, I think we mentioned it before, with the name of Pershouse, P-E-R-S-H-O-U-S-E, and they have they trace their lines back into the 1500s in Staffordshire, England. And the Pershouse name came about supposedly because it was a corruption of someone was of, say, John Parke's house, and the Parke's house somehow through dialect or whatever morphed into Purse House, but DNA tells us they are related to the Q, Lieutenant Richard Parks line.
Okay.
So Staffordshire is a possibility there. The Robert line, which the society was founded on, was from Cartmel, and that's in Westmoreland up in northern England, not far from where this distant relative in our group was from, in Kendal. But they genetically are not related. So we've got an idea of where some of the English lines are from. So, well, that's probably it for today, unless anybody's got anything else to contribute. It was good seeing you all, and stay tuned next. Carrie, we'll probably be talking about your group a lot next month, because at some point we're going to probably schedule a separate Zoom meeting just for members in your group and anyone in the Park Society, but anybody who's in that testing group, whether they're members or not, to really get into the weeds on what the big Y stuff is telling you.
Yeah, that would certainly be interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I love all this stuff. I just have too darn many hobbies.
Yeah.
But the one thing that, or I'm just going to report this in case it'll be valuable strategy for other groups. But I wanted to do the big Y test, but it was a little pricey, not in the scheme of things, but it was, more than a loaf of bread. So, okay, has to go past the finance committee and all that. So I could never sell the idea. Well, what are you going to do with this information? When you die, nobody's going to care. And one of our group members contacted me and said, we want you to do a big Y because we care. I mean, they didn't know the little argument I was having, but she went so far as to say, well, I'll pay for it. You just do it. And I'm like, well, I can't let that happen. And boom, problem solved. I got, the finance committee approved it and off we went. So if you can't shame them into it that way, maybe you can take up a collection, everybody throw in $20 and you'll get it. I mean,
well, there is on the DNA project, there is a general fund, and you can make, or anybody can make contributions to that and earmark them for a certain purpose. And that's something you can spread to other family members to, sort of share the burden, because it's something that they would all benefit from. But we have to, and that's why we're still learning, and with this presentation next month, perhaps make it more obvious what the benefits of upgrading to that test are, because it's not cheap. It's not cheap. So unless you can tell people what they're likely to get out of it and make that plain, then it's a tough sell. So
Gary's chart just opened my eyes that if I'd have had that years ago, that would have been awesome.
Ken, we have to get together and talk about what we're going to do next week or next month.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So, and Wilma, I was going to talk to you for getting more people in our group. Definitely somebody from your line would be a good candidate. And I'm thinking Jack Parks, maybe.
Yeah, and I haven't had a touch with him.
I haven't either, but we should get in touch with him. Yeah.
As far as I know, well, I take that back, because I have another cousin that's related to that Fred Staples that you've been in contact with.
Yeah.
Audrey, his sister or cousin. She had some information that she wanted to send to Jack because it didn't apply to her line, but it applied to him. So I connected the two of them, and I don't know whatever became of it because neither one of them has emailed me since then.
Yeah.
So, but I could probably I still got Jack's email. I could probably get a hold of him.
Yeah.
Ask him.
We've lost touch with a lot of people because of COVID.
Yeah.
You turn around and you realize it's been 3 or 4 years since you had any contact with people. So
and I was just today, I was counting how many Parks family members we have left. We have 13 Parks family members left, and 3 of them are not blood Parkses, they're adopted. So we're down to 10 people. in our immediate family.
Wow. Ooh.
It's not counting my kids, of course, but, just Parks,
Mhm.
my generation and one
Yeah.
older. Leonard is still with us, so,
And that's
I have
kind of surprising that he's the one that's
yeah.
still
He's-
hanging on.
He's 97. so
Yeah.
97.
Then I have a question for you, and that is, you've talked about your list. Where do we find it?
Oh, I will put some more things on it, and when I throw this recording up, I'll send a mailing out to everyone, and there will be a link to that list on there, because I'll put that list on our Google Drive, and anyone with the link can access it
Good
and then
question, David.
download it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ken, you might want to put the link to this Zoom meeting in your signature or something, so any of your communications that goes out to this group would include that, because I couldn't find I just stumbled into the other group from the 21 link, and then one of them had the one to this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was telling Gary, I did the mailing for this last week, prior to last Saturday, and I think I shouldn't do that, because I had a couple of people who tried to log on last Saturday and tried to, and for some reason Zoom started recording, and I got a notice that the Zoom recording was, and it's sometimes 2 or 3 minutes while they stayed on. So I'll only post these notices to people within the week before the thing, so that we don't confuse people. We're still learning as we go, but
Yes, you'll find out there, because I went to log in earlier.
Yeah.
And I was having issues, so you may find a couple recordings that happened with me earlier today, like around 2:22 or so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was having issues because the link that was in the thing wasn't set up as a hyperlink, and so I had to play around getting it online. That's should it in that message that you send out with MailChimp. Why doesn't that? Can you not have it show as a hyperlink?
it should. I'll check that out.
Because it didn't, and so I had to copy it off and then plug it into Google in order to get the site. So
Okay. Well, I'll check into that and make sure that, because again, I'm learning as I go with that MailChimp as well, but I thought it was, but I'll check it. So,
okay. All right.
okay. Well, take it out of my pay. I'm sorry. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody.
Hey, Ken,
Thank you.
And we'll talk about the topic and send out some news about it. But you'll hear once the recording of this is available, and the link to this document with some sources on there.
hey,
Okay.
Ken,
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
I think Larry has a question.
Yeah, Larry, you have a question?
are you looking for people other than Parks to go into your DNA match or not?
If you have a Parks connection with an autosomal test, we have a number of people in the project who have joined with autosomal tests, and we just started. Gary and I sorted them out and started with an initial batch of reaching out to people, because we just haven't done that before. And we've gotten a couple of responses, one of which said they were going to join the society, but they provided their Parks connection. And what I did was, with that one, on the page that relates to the group we know they're genetically related to, down at the bottom, I put a family finder tests, and I put their information there. I think we could maybe do that as we get time. It's a factor of having the time to do all that, but yeah. And it may help people to find each other and compare. And with a family finder, if you have matches to somebody who has a Parks connection, then sometimes you can begin to figure some things out.
Well, yeah, I matched back to Benjamin Parks out of Missouri in around 1800 on autosomal with several people actually.
Well, if you've taken a family finder test at FTDNA, or if you've taken an ancestry test, you can download that file and upload it to Family Tree DNA, where we could, connect people, and we might be able to help you out looking at connections and see what we can figure out. So, yeah, it's primarily for Y-DNA, male surnamed Parks men. That's the primary focus of it, but we're trying to find a way to include, the autosomal. There isn't, because of the nature of the test, there's no set of numbers you can post up there like you can with the Y-DNA. So it's a little trickier. We'll do what we can. So yeah.
Okay.
In the beginning, I wanted to tell Melinda, you should probably, if you haven't already, join the Park project with your autosomal if you can get it into FTDNA.
Yeah. I think I'd said earlier that my father, I got my dad to put in a sample. And so we're in the Park project. I definitely have some information there. So I'll see if he'll do a big Y test and see if I could extend the information with that way.
And while we're on it, if you really want to spend additional, it's not that much. Order a family finder, an autosomal test for your dad.
Okay.
Yours would be useful, but he has twice the amount of Parks
Right.
DNA that you would have. Your test would give you a lot of information on your mother's side of the family as well. But in terms of the autosomal, the earlier generation is going to have that much more and would have matches that you might not have. So
Okay. Okay, definitely will.
Yeah, that's what I really meant to say.
Okay, well, it's a little early, but I think I smell a martini somewhere in the house. So I made it through dry January till the 9th or 10th, and I didn't miss it at all. What I missed was just the routine of ending the day with a cocktail. So
When I come visit, I don't do martinis, but I'll have a little flask of whiskey.
All right.
Oh, we've got that too. The bar is
Irish or JD.
We could probably accommodate any taste. So okay.
Hey, could everybody go through and tell me what city you're in? Because I'm meeting you all for the first time, although I recognize a lot of names. So it'd be nice to know where you are in the country. I'm in Pasadena, California.
I'm outside of Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay.
I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I'm in Haverford, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Hayden, Idaho.
I'm
San
in
Diego,
Western
California.
Massachusetts.
How about if I'm going to point out who's going to say where they're from. How about Patrick?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Yep.
Okay.
Dan?
Granite City, Illinois, it's across the river from St. Louis.
David?
I'm in Leicester, Massachusetts, near Worcester.
Worcester.
Carrie? You're muted.
Muted. He's in Florida. I know he's in Florida.
And
there I go. Yeah, Fort Myers, Florida.
And Larry?
Hayden, Idaho.
I'm in New York State in the Catskills, and Fred R has is over somewhere near.
Are we taking after this?
How about Becky?
San Diego, California.
Okay.
And Maryland? I guess that's it.
All right. Thank you.
I have a question for Becky. Becky, have you taken care of any December receipts yet?
Yes, I actually just mailed in the deposit yesterday for
Okay.
the latter part of December and January because I had so many checks, it was getting really vague. So I thought I'm just gonna send it a little early. And then Suzanne had asked me if I had gotten her check because it hadn't cleared the bank. She was a little worried about it, but I think she wrote it right before Christmas. And by the time I got it, I'd already did the December deposit. So anyway, yep, I got it and just mailed it out yesterday.
Okay, because I need to get my our files updated. So, you know, send. I'd like to, if you can, try to give me